Hello, welcome everyone. I see you folks trickling into our webinar room. Welcome, welcome. This is the Kickstarting Your 2025 Projects, How to Secure Federal Funding for Biking, Walking, and Safe Routes to School. This is what you registered for. You're in the right place. I'll give folks a minute to come on in, get settled. Great. As folks are coming in, I just want to mention that this webinar is made possible through the generous support of the William Penn Foundation. So we're very grateful for that and grateful to you all for your interest in joining us today. So as you come into our Zoom room, welcome everyone. We are very curious to know who's with us today. So please use the chat box to tell us who you are, where in the country you're tuning in from, your connection to Safe Routes, and let us know if you've ever applied for federal funding for biking, walking, or Safe Routes to School. And if so, which kinds of funding programs you've been pursuing. So please take a minute to do that. As you do that, I will go ahead and share with you all a little bit about our organization. We are Safe Routes Partnership. We are a national nonprofit, and our mission at the Safe Routes Partnership is to advance safe walking and rolling to and from schools and in everyday life, improving the health and well-being of people of all races, income levels, and abilities, building healthy, thriving communities for everyone. Some housekeeping items before we get started. We have the chat box open. It's great to see people from Pennsylvania, but also from across the country joining us today. The chat box is open for your comments, but also for you to share resources that you feel others would benefit from. We ask that you use the Q&A function, though, in the Zoom on the bottom bar there. If there's questions that are coming up for you, that's a much easier way for us to kind of track those questions. So please do that. Also know that a recording of this webinar and slides will be made available. And after you log off, you'll get a quick sort of notification from Zoom asking you to do a survey. We really appreciate any feedback you have to provide to us that helps us to improve our webinars and our content. And with that, I would like to introduce myself. I am Vanessa Cascio. I am the Program and Policy Manager at Safe Routes Partnership. I am currently based in Washington, D.C., and part of my role at the partnership is supporting our federal policy efforts. This includes tracking how states are using funding for biking, walking, safe routes to school, and leading technical assistance to help communities secure that funding. I also want to mention that I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Corey Johnson, who is providing tech support and also helping moderate the chat, and will be dropping some links and resources in the chat as well. I'm also joined by Marisa Jones, our Managing Director. Marisa also leads our federal policy work on Capitol Hill and will be available to answer any questions that you might have around any of these funding opportunities we'll be talking about today. But with that, I'm also thrilled to be joined by two experts from Pennsylvania who are really seasoned professionals at helping communities build and fund biking, walking, and safe routes to school projects. Joe Banks is a Pennsylvania Department of Transportation Consultant Project Manager, as well as Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission's manager for the Office of Pennsylvania Project Implementation. Joe manages locally sponsored federal, state-funded projects focused on bicycle and pedestrian projects for PennDOT. He also manages PennDOT's District 6 and DVRPC's Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program, otherwise known as TASA. We also have Mark Hood with us today. Mark is a senior traffic safety engineer with Pannoni Associates and the Pennsylvania Local Technical Assistance Program. His responsibilities include providing consulting, training, and technical assistance services to federal, state, municipal, and private clients throughout the country and internationally. Fields of expertise include traffic engineering, highway safety, pedestrian safety, technology transfer, research, and paratransit. Mark is also a diehard Red Sox fan, for anybody who's wondering. So I'm thrilled that we have this really dynamic set of speakers with us. And I want to mention that regardless of where you are tuning in from, we want to encourage you to listen in, knowing that today we're going to be covering two different funding sources, funding programs that are available to all communities in every state. And so while some of the specifics might vary depending on your state, we hope you get inspired by the types of projects that are possible with these funding programs. We also hope that you really take advantage of the fact that we have two very knowledgeable speakers who know how to navigate state DOTs and MPO funding processes. So really take the opportunity to listen in on how they talk about projects and be able to take away how to get those projects off the ground, even if some of the specific timelines and grants might be a little bit different in your state. And lastly, we hope that you leave with some resources and some next steps to position your community for funding. Also want to mention and plug in that if you're a community located in Greater Philadelphia, stay tuned as I will talk more about a free technical assistance opportunity to be able to support developing your funding application. So before I hand things off to our first speaker, I want to mention that you will be hearing about a couple different funding opportunities on today's webinar. And these funding sources are administered differently based on federal law. So first, you'll hear about a formula program called Transportation Alternatives Program. In Pennsylvania, this funding program is referred to as Transportation Alternative Set-Aside, or TASA. And for formula funding programs, each state receives an apportionment based on a formula that considers things like population, and state DOTs administer these funds based on instructions from Congress. So I will be sharing resources also towards the end, so you have information specific to your state's TAP program. Then there's discretionary grants. These are awarded directly by US DOT on a competitive basis. Each program has its own guidelines informed by Congress. And for today, I will be sharing more information about the Safe Streets and Roads for All, which is one of the many of these discretionary grant programs. But with that, I'm excited to hand the mic over to Joe to dive deeper into one of these programs.
Joe, you're on mute. Can you come off mute and start over? Sorry about that.
I am sorry. Yeah, no, my apologies. Thank you, Vanessa, and it's great to see a large number of people that are signed up to hear about the information we have to share today. So thank you much. You can go to the next slide, Vanessa. So as Vanessa said, my name is Joe Banks. I work at DVRPC, which is the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. In Pennsylvania, we represent Bucks County, Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, and Philadelphia counties. And through this TASA program, I am the coordinator to facilitate those counties, DCNR, DCED, DVRPC planners, SEPTA, Public Participation Task Force folks, District 6, to basically select projects because, as Vanessa mentioned, we get a regional allocation of funds to do so. So being the largest population in the state, we also have the largest pool of regional funds. And then also being a statewide reviewer, I'm able to kind of see, how the rest of the distribution works and get familiar with the rest of the state to provide my expertise on the program side, but also then on the project management side. Once the projects are awarded, I do consultant project management work for PennDOT. DVRPC has done management of these locally sponsored, federally funded projects for a little over 20 years. I've been doing it for about 15. And just through the TAP and TASA program, we've had 125 plus projects come through, selected since 2014 when the organization or when the program started. We had a 14 round, a 16 round, 18 round, 21 round, and 23 round. So we've had 5 rounds so far, and we've been able to learn a lot. Of those projects that we have been awarded to our region, they've totaled over $110 million. So it's a pretty significant portfolio for my team and I to kind of oversee and facilitate through that design development process. Other federally funded programs that we work with CMAQ, carbon reduction, we work with Tiger, previously TE, Hometown Streets, Safe Routes to School, and PCTI, just to name a few. And then statewide, we've also managed a handful of the multimodal funded projects as well. You go to the next slide, Vanessa. So I just want to talk a little bit about like the project development, what you want to think about from a sponsor perspective, a project type, you know, getting the designer to help you before you kind of make that application. So sponsors, and this is all information I'm pulling from the guidance, which is on the statewide TASA website. And it spells out who can be a sponsor, what project types are eligible, and you know, all the different information that I'm kind of going over, assuming that the guidance hasn't changed much over the last decade. So I'm kind of working off of that to share this information. But sponsors are typically municipalities or counties. Many times they've been transportation management associations, so TMAs, and then also we've had some nonprofits. The project types you see are typical. You know, we typically see sidewalks, trails, roadway crossings, and non-infrastructure stuff. However, you know, we've also seen, you know, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, on-road facilities such as sharrows and bike lanes. We've had bump outs, speed cushions, GSI or green stormwater infrastructure, along with other gray infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure. We've done historic streets restoration, and we've restored historic train stations and historic canals. So there's a wide range of them, but majority of the projects that we do end up managing and do get or successfully awarded are sidewalk and trail projects. So initially, when you're thinking about the design funding for these programs, and that's the responsibility of the sponsor to cover, there's no true match requirement. However, they are responsible to cover the pre-construction activities, which would be PE, final design, right-of-way potentially, depending on if you need to acquire anything or purchase any right-of-way from, you know, private or commercial properties. You want to think about it. In our region, we actually use the William Penn Regional Trails Program that DVRPC administers as one of our, you know, ways to fund some of our trail projects, along with DCNR. DCNR has a ton of grants that are utilized, and they typically have a 50% match. In our region, we're able to usually provide that match to the regional trails. So at times, some of our municipalities doing a trail project don't in fact actually have to put up any money, but they have to time these grant opportunities appropriately so they have the money in hand to then apply for the construction funding. Other times, it's just a good way to start budgeting future to say, hey, I want to apply for this program. How can we look at our municipal or county budgets to make sure that we're allocating about 10 to 20% of a construction request? That's about what design costs to get through this federally funded process. So you would use a consultant early on, pre-application, to put together a concept plan and an estimate. That concept plan would have logical termini. One of the requirements during pre-application is to meet with the with the MPO and the district. And because we represent both, it's kind of a one-stop shop here at District 6. So, you know, we're looking at logical termini, we're looking at right-of-way questions, environmental questions. We're asking, you know, the project teams to provide a little bit more information on their structure, if they have any railroad involvement, just to get a better understanding of how they can kind of answer questions that will come up during the selection process. And then from an estimate perspective, the project's going to be bid through ECMS, which is PennDOT's engineering and construction management system. So for folks that aren't familiar with that, it's just a really good process to kind of house everything, and that's where the projects are bid. But these estimates are typically, you know, 2.5 times higher than a normal municipal estimate because of the use of federal funds and kind of going through this process. So, and then applying for construction funding. And if you go to the next slide, Vanessa, talk a little bit about the timelines. So we've had, like I said, 5 rounds, and they've typically kind of had an application cycle open during the summer. So, you know, anywhere from 3 to 4 months. That application cycle closes, and my team and I distribute them, the applications, the regional applications that are in our location, District 6, to our review team. And, they have a couple weeks or a month or so to review them. We have a meeting, and then we do some, follow-ups as necessary with different, applicants. And at that same time, we're starting to review some of the statewide applications, which again, can be, significant. There's been over 100 in our state at times to kind of run through. In our region, we typically see between 30 and 50. So we make a decision based on the amount of funding that we have, and we've historically gone to the RTC and board in our January timeline, and the state usually makes their announcement sometime thereafter it. So any project that does not receive regional funding is still eligible for statewide funding in our situation. So it's one application to kind of be able to receive both pots of funding, but essentially it's the same funding. Next slide, Vanessa. So if awarded, this process takes between 2 and 3 years. Sometimes it could take 4 years. If you read the guidance, it really says it has to be done in 18 months, which is again a difficult position to kind of see initially, but you do have about 2 or 3 years to kind of get through it once awarded. What you want to do is hire a consultant that's familiar with PennDOT and very familiar with ECMS and federal funds. It's going to save you time, money, and the headache in the future. Not to say that municipal engineers aren't good and can't be a good resource. They're not always best set up for this process, because it does take a little bit more work, and the familiarity with the process and the program really does help. A sponsor would be required to do a reimbursement agreement with the DOT, and also to contract construction inspection with a construction inspection firm, because when you're applying for construction funds, they cover construction costs plus the construction inspection fees as well. So in Pennsylvania, the projects are advertised and bid through ECMS. The advertisement period takes about 5 weeks, and then from bid or lead opening, before you issue notice to proceed, it's usually another 12 weeks and a day. So you're looking at about 4 months between advertisement and actually getting a shovel in the ground. Next slide, Vanessa. So one of the project types that I had mentioned is non-infrastructure. So they've been very popular in the last few rounds because of their low cost and their large impact. Our TMAs have been very successful, along with the city of Philadelphia, in developing programs that are going into schools and utilizing students and parents to provide walkability audits for their communities and for the projects that would be eligible for Safe Routes to School funding or TASA funding, to basically make it safer in their communities. What's been really good to see is that these have been kind of repeat customers, where they're going to a school and they're doing a program, and then they're going to a different school in a future round, and being able to provide that information out to other folks. Another opportunity for non-infrastructure is just as simple as doing bike rodeos, assemblies, other things that really just promote biking and walking to school are really important. Next slide, Vanessa. And then talking about funding, I didn't really get into that specifically, but being the largest MPO in Pennsylvania, we received the most amount of funding based on our population. And before IIJA, we received about $3.5 to $4 million per federal fiscal year. And typically per round, we select 2 federal fiscal years of funding. So we were selecting about $7.5 to $8 million. Our last cycle, we were able to almost double that to $15.5 million. So it was able to allow us to select bigger projects, more projects, and really utilize these funds for things that we knew would be successful based on our history of previous rounds. And I know this is based in Safe Routes to School. The Safe Routes to School funding is actually encompassed into the TASA application process. Sometimes that might only be a few $1 million, but if a project's within 2 miles of a school, it's eligible for that Safe Routes to School funding. And we as District 6 have pulled in some of the Safe Routes to School funding from the state in the past. Typically the state has between $20 and $60 million over these future these past rounds. We've collected about 25% to about a third of the funding through our area or region of the state, based on the competitive nature of the program, the applications we're putting in, the work that we're putting in on the front end. We've seen that projects that have kind of gone to pre-application prior, like, and discussed with us beforehand have been more successful because we've kind of ironed out some of the unknowns and we've answered questions, or we've actually deterred someone from applying for this program. Maybe they're more suited for another program that is not as rigorous or, you know, has a different timeline. To kind of end my presentation, I'm going to show some pictures of some completed projects that we've recently completed and kind of have some nuanced differences in the style of project that they are. So Vanessa, if you want to go to the first project. So this project's in Morrisville, Bucks County. It's on the East Coast Greenway and our Circuit Trails network. The canal trail was cut off by Bridge Street when they put a new bridge in the 1940s. And you can see on the south side of the bridge, there were just some steps to kind of get up. And then to continue on the towpath, you had to go around the parking lot and up and through. So we were able to design and build 2 ramps, one on each side, a mid-block crossing with some bump outs, some pavement markings for safety, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons, RFB, to cross the road safely for bikes and pedestrians. Connecting, again, this being one of the top 10 trail gaps in by DCNR, being the canal path as a DCNR facility. And this was one that we had a ribbon cutting for just in 2024. Another ribbon cutting we had is on the next slide. This is, you move on, Vanessa. Sorry. This is a gentleman biking on the Fox Chase Lomer Trail. This connects directly kind of in the direction he's going in to a SEPTA train station, which is at the end of a line. The tracks you see on the right are actually just for storage. It's not truly an active trail. However, this used to be an active SEPTA rail line, so we had to coordinate with SEPTA on this project. This project actually connects out to the county line into Montgomery County, and that trail network is mostly built out entirely in Montgomery and connects into Bucks County, and then has about 2.5 miles in Bucks County, and a project that I'm the manager of that's in design now that was TASA funded to extend that even further. So, you know, we have multiple and multi-county traversing of these, you know, municipal and county-led trails, so folks can kind of continue on through from this train station and even come from, you know, another county away. Continue down. This is our third project that we go to the next one, Vanessa. This is the third project that we had a ribbon cutting for this year, and it's at the State and Rowan intersection under I-95. So the trail was built across the street from here, and there was not really a safe crossing of the 4-lane roadway. So we had a refuge island put in, and the trail was extended, as you can see in front of you, out to an existing pennypack trail that gets you down to the river in Delaware River in Northeast Philadelphia. Where that little grass strip, you can see there's a bigger area there that actually has some GSI, green stormer infrastructure, that was a part of it. We coordinated with the water department for this one as well. So some exciting stuff, but again, just got us across the roadway a little bit safer in this very urban environment. Next slide, Vanessa. I've got about 2 or 3 more pictures to share, and then we'll pass on the mark. So DVRPC bought a drone over the summer. So this is a real cool drone shot of a project in Bucks County. Take note of the larger, wider ADA ramps to accommodate for the multi-use trail. Next slide, Vanessa. Thank you. One of the things we've learned as the program developed is that when you are trying to add a trail to an existing PennDOT structure, you need to integrate this barrier to the right into the bridge deck. And then obviously the railing there is at a certain elevation to meet AASHTO requirements, same with the fencing over to the left. But that can add $100,000 or $200,000 to a project construction cost that we were unaware of a couple of cycles ago. This is an example of adding this trail, kind of taking over where the shoulder used to be in the roadway and coordinating very extensively with the PennDOT structures unit. Next slide. This is a historic street in Old City. Previously, someone came through and paved over this roadway with asphalt, and we were able to put back in there with these Belgian blocks and update the sidewalk and some ADA ramps. This is something that the city's trying to do on all of their historic streets ahead of the 250-year anniversary. And the last one I think here is for my friends at the water department. If you go to the next slide, Vanessa, a GSI example of a catch basin. This one you can see as you're walking on the sidewalk. It's not one that we worked on, but it's a similar example where stormwater can be treated and stored for a bit. A lot of times the projects I've worked on were, excavating a sidewalk out or putting a bump out in, and the water department's able to partner with the City of Philadelphia Streets Department to basically put some underground storage underneath the existing sidewalk. So once that sidewalk gets put back in, there's some inlets, some catch basins, some other things that direct the water to it, and the public's essentially none the wiser. However, there is an opportunity, because stormwater is an eligible activity, to make an improvement to that water quality along with the quality of the pedestrian facility as well. So that's my slide. I would encourage, they're my slides. I would encourage anyone that has any questions specifically to reach out to myself, and we can connect you with the appropriate persons for the state of Pennsylvania, or the program in general for our region. Thank you. I'll pass it to Mark.
Thanks, Joe. Mark, if you want to come off mute, I have your slides up.
All right, very good. Great session. Thank you for a lot of that, Joe. Before I get started in some of my slides, I thought I'd ask a question right away. So sorry for messing up the order here, but Joe, for some of the slides you showed at the end, what were some of the just ballpark figures for costs for those projects?
So a lot of the projects that we do are over $1 million. They're about $1 million, and some of them are even starting to get into the $1.5 million or $2 million range. Early in this program, we were funding $500,000 projects, $750,000 projects. But for the most part, like I mentioned with estimates, they're usually like 2.5 times higher when you involve federal funds. So yeah, I mean that historic street project was $1 million. The Fox Chase project was probably close to 2, although it did have some signal work, associated to it. So yeah, not cheap.
And my point in asking that question was just kind of moving forward. If you're going to be encouraging the municipalities and others to apply for grants, whether it be here in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or over the country, would your funding agency be even interested in looking at projects that were smaller, or are you looking at projects that are, in the $1 million range?
So technically the guidance says $50,000 is the minimum you can do for a construction project. However, we've done a $90,000 project. It essentially costs and goes through the same process of a $2 million project. So you still have to go through all the design approvals, et cetera. Non-infrastructure, we're seeing around the $200,000 to $400,000 range. That's actually, like I said, good bang for its buck. But what we suggest is anything under $300,000 or $400,000, probably $500,000, isn't worth going through the process of a federally funded, just duration, et cetera.
Okay, great. I get that question all the time from municipalities who are looking at grant funding, kind of concerned that their projects are either too small or in some cases too big. So I think that's really great information. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to apologize. I'm actually going to turn my camera off because my shades here in my office are broken and the sun is shining in, blinding me. So it's probably to the benefit of everybody not to be looking at me anyway. So I'm just going to stop the video so I can actually see as we're going through the slides here. Thanks, Joe, for that great presentation, Vanessa, for the introduction. I thought I'd switch gears just a little bit here with my presentation and talking a little bit about resources that you guys might utilize for working on applications. And, kind of one of the key points that I wanted to bring up was not only to utilize what's out there, to come in prepared. I think Joe mentioned a little bit of doing concept plans and having a good idea of what you'd like to do going into, and working with consultants that are familiar with, in this case, our DOT and our regional planning organizations processes, and understanding that each state and each MPO or RPO might have some different processes that they will follow. So that communication up front is going to be really important, besides the advocacy work of what you'd like to accomplish. Okay. So, excuse me. Trying to control the slides here. We'll go to the next slide. I thought I'd start off with just a few keys to success when thinking about projects that you might be interested in applying for funding for. Okay. It starts off again with a vision. What are you trying to accomplish? What would you like to do with this particular project? What benefits can you outline in your application that will apply to all road users, not necessarily focusing on motorists where you see a lot of grant applications coming in, but what types of infrastructure will help encourage walking and bicycling and making those activities safer. I believe the vision of what you're trying to do can sometimes get a little large. So the scope of work really needs to be narrowed down, particularly with the costs in mind. Just last year, I was working with a municipality in the western part of our state, and they were looking to apply for a grant of well over $10 million. And we're basically told, that's a great vision, but in reality, with the budgets that are available, find something a little more realistic. They're not going to, whether it be a planning organization or the state, take all of their money or the majority and fund one singular project. So the scoping of the project needs to fit with the vision, but be realistic in terms of what you feel this is going to cost. Secondly, make sure you have a champion. That champion could be your project sponsor. It could be advocacy groups that you're working with. I noticed in on the sessions today, we have participants from a number of different advocacy organizations encouraging the infrastructure needed to make walking and bicycling a viable transportation mode. So picking out a champion or a couple of champions to help move the process forward, not just in terms of developing your applications, but also throughout the course of the project. As Joe mentioned, these are not, we're going to implement this within 5 minutes or within a month. These are longer term projects that need that advocacy to continue the momentum through the completion of the project. Developing a plan. You'd like a plan that's technically sound. So if you are a municipal grant writer and you've written all sorts of different types of grants, I would recommend working again with someone who's familiar with how the infrastructure grants in your state work and within your organization, particularly in partnering with your DOT and your regional planning organizations. They will help and should help from a technical standpoint, work with your consultants who have some expertise in this area. So municipal engineers who may be, fantastic at designing and keeping your roads free of water and improving the drainage and making sure they have a great plan for their asphalt maintenance programs, might not be as familiar with the infrastructure needs for different modes and how they can be integrated into those. So make sure that as your applications are developed, they're in a technically sound format that are realistic. Fourth point, small successes. Not only celebrate small successes, but right at the end of the presentation, Joe talked a little bit about non-infrastructure monies, the Safe Routes to School monies, for example, and even small successes in terms of upgrading crosswalks, determining whether a crosswalk was warranted and how to best delineate that so that the crosswalks across a number of roadways on the way to a school are not just delineated for parents and children to walk to and from school, but are also delineated well for traffic so that they can see them and respect them and yield to those pedestrians who are using those that right of way. So don't be afraid to include those smaller parts of the projects, making things accessible, bringing them up to ADA standards, ensuring that all of those accessibility parts to an overall larger project are addressed. So those small successes can really build momentum. If your grant or your project is looking in the $500,000 to a $750,000 range, make sure that there's different, or even the larger ones, make sure there's different components to it rather than say, well, let's just focus on a bridge project to get people across this bridge, which might be important, but does it tie in with your other infrastructure? Can we use some of the low-hanging monies available to look at non-infrastructure type of activities, developing a walking school bus or a bicycle train, or when I helped Chris Mecca here at PennDOT work through our Safe Routes to School program, we had developed lesson plans that are made available for 3rd and 6th grade teachers throughout Pennsylvania to be able to incorporate walking and bicycling safety for kids in those age ranges, so that as the infrastructure builds, people are familiar with it and are able to use it safely. Funding, certainly, I'm not going to spend as much time there as that was kind of Joe's focus on that, but be realistic about the cost estimates that are being developed and realize that it's going to take time. Okay. So those are kind of, if you get anything out of the talk here, or at least my portion of the presentation, keep those keys to success available. You know, unfortunately, you're never going to, probably another key to success might be hiring crossing guards that are that good looking there in the picture, but, you know, keeping the technical soundness of all of these will be really important. All right, next slide. I'm going to talk about 2 specific resources that would be very helpful for you, for those here in Pennsylvania, but also for those outside of the state that can help boost an application. Okay. Those are 2 both federally and state run and managed projects. One's called the Local Technical Assistance Program, or LTAP program, and the second is the PennDOT Connects program. There may be, well, I will say I know there's equivalent programs in other states, and all other states have a T2 center or an LTAP center that provide training and technical assistance to local governments. And the Connects program is a bit unique to Pennsylvania. There may be some other states that have something similar, but I want to point out a few resources that are available for those through those programs that can help with developing an application. The LTAP program, the Pennsylvania LTAP program, is a program here in this state that provides free training and technical assistance services to any local government in our state. Pennsylvania is a little bit unique in that it's a Commonwealth structure where the counties don't own much infrastructure other than bridges. All of our infrastructure is either owned by the state, so about a 1/3 of the roads in the state are owned by the DOT, and the other 2/3 are owned on a municipal level. And there are over 2,500 municipalities, each of which own and maintain that network. So going back to the communication and coordination theme, it's going to be incredibly important when looking at projects that might span over several municipalities who work together with that. And the LTAP program, whether it be through virtual or in-person training, or more importantly, for this, the on-site technical support services that are available can help. How can they help? Let's say I'll give a project that I worked on earlier this summer. We had a municipality who was looking to, in their small borough, encourage walking and bicycling throughout the borough and tying in the schools with it. I was able to go out through this. I'm a engineer for the LTAP program, and we basically do a walkability audit of the borough and look at connectivity between schools and pedestrian generators and come up with kind of a small plan of here are some low cost, medium cost, and high cost ideas on how you can improve these things. This is all free of charge in our state. Other states may have a small charge. Many states have free technical assistance through their LTAP programs, but take advantage of it. There's a lot of good expertise out there that can even help spark not just your vision, but give you the foundational parts, if you would, of a good grant. Okay. Next slide. While when it comes to this highway safety side of things with the LTAP program, these are just some of the relevant topics outside of the roadway maintenance side of things, which include active transportation, walking, biking, trails, mass transit connections, ADA, and transition plans and self-evaluations to make sure that your infrastructure is accessible from a roadway standpoint. Developing a local road safety plan that includes all modes of transportation, so reducing not just highway crashes, but those involving pedestrians and bicyclists. And then some of the more hardcore infrastructure type things, pavement markings, sight distance signs, traffic calming elements, curb extensions, speed humps, those type of things. Doing walkability audits are all available at no charge for our municipalities here in Pennsylvania. Next slide. The second kind of free resource I'd like to bring up is the PennDOT Connects program. This is a bit unique at least that I've seen. The program is a state-sponsored program through central office at PennDOT, and the goal is really to better communities through collaboration, particularly in our state, as I mentioned, when we have so many different small municipal entities and overlapping planning organizations and school districts, and then the DOT, all of these people working together towards a singular project or a singular goal. Connects can really help with that. So they build partnerships, they can help leverage resources and really lead to a more livable Pennsylvania is their ultimate goal. So if you're looking for some technical assistance on looking at projects to improve not just access and mobility, but even economic competitiveness, the PennDOT Connects program, again, available also to do walkability audits and looking at all of the other aspects of it, of a project from that standpoint. So one of their emphasis points is really that all mobility needs are considered, and the infrastructure has to tie in to make it work. So the Connects program, through their technical assistance, can also help with your infrastructure applications. I don't know of, I know actually in Europe, there are quite a number of these initiatives from a planning organization as well, and others where specific planning organizations have it just for their region. But in Pennsylvania, they've been able to coordinate it on a statewide basis. Next slide. Okay, some of the Connects topics that we've been involved with in working with the department are shown here. So whether they be looking at urban growth, rural preservation, economic revitalization, transit revitalization, impact fees, capital improvement programming. It's kind of a one-stop shop where the LTAP program focuses on the end of things, making your infrastructure, how to build and maintain a local road network. The Connects topics kind of expands on that and ties all aspects together. All right, next slide. Last couple slides, I'm going to zip through so we leave some time here for questions and answers. I think everybody's pretty aware of the importance of these grants that folks are applying for, and understanding the need for good, safe routes to school, and also just general livability, walkability issues. There are Department of Health partners here in Pennsylvania who have helped out with our projects for obvious health reasons, whether it be adolescent overweight and obesity rates, the number of students who are walking and bicycling declining over the last 50 years, and the health impacts of that. Next slide. But even when focusing on the schools, they have an overall impact on the larger community, because the larger community uses those types of that infrastructure as well. So just a couple of quick slides where I'll show you a couple of projects we had worked on from a lower cost standpoint that eventually are leading into larger projects. And I apologize, could you go back one slide? Yeah, so whether we're looking in a rural community and you or your community are facing issues like you're seeing here on the left, where the backup of vehicles queuing during student pickup and drop-off times, are there ways that we can encourage kids to walk and bike to school from a non-infrastructure, but also an infrastructure standpoint? And if we can improve those or bring in a better infrastructure availability, hopefully we can start to reduce some of these congestion and safety issues that result. So again, starting walking school buses, as you saw on the right, was part of that, and hopefully getting fewer parents to do the pickup and drop off side of things can help. Next slide. So moving from a more rural community to an urban community, Camp Hill is a small borough outside of Harrisburg in Cumberland County, and looking at infrastructure projects here with tunnels going underneath roadways and or rail facilities, which improve the connectivity throughout the entire borough, such that from a school standpoint, there are no students who are bused within the borough. They've been able to accommodate, based on their school infrastructure, the ability to have all kids walk and bike to school or other transportation, but not busing. So next slide. Excuse me. So again, so from a more rural to a more suburban and even in urban areas, looking at projects, I think Joe had a couple good examples of some of the larger scale projects, but even smaller scale, about making sure crossing guards are available, improving traffic signal timing, and possible RFB implementation can really help. Next slide. And there were a couple questions on walkability audits. You know, these are the sort of things that you can get from at least the Connects and the LTAP program, where we go in. I've actually done a 2-day session where we observe kind of the drop-off period in the evening and the pickup in the next morning, and then develop a set of recommendations about, you know, separating modes. Where should students be released? What kind of infrastructure in and around this campus would make it safer in and around here, but also to get where the students need to go. Next slide. Again, more suburban one, separating the modes out, figuring out how students would walk, and then what infrastructure is going to be needed to kind of plant the seed, some basic cost estimates where they can go ahead and build a larger grant application around it. All right. Very good. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. Again, a couple of those key points: start the communication, get as many players as you can involved, and work towards that singular goal. Have your champion and vision focused on what you'd like to accomplish and how you can form your grant to show the benefits of what you're trying to implement. Next slide. I put a couple contacts up here, both for the programs here in Pennsylvania. And as Joe mentioned, if there are other follow-ups, please reach out to Marissa, Vanessa, myself, Joe, and we can point you in the right direction for any of these. And my last point, there were a couple questions on acronyms. So let me very quickly just make sure everybody's on the same page with those. When we talk about PennDOT's ECMS system, that's the Engineering, Construction, and Management Services. It's basically there. You can go in and get recent costs of projects or pricing of individual details all the way down to bolts on guide rail or signal heads. And it's also how PennDOT runs their construction project management, contacts, consultant agreements, those kinds of things. MPO, hopefully everyone's aware of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, RPO, or the rural planning organizations in our state. DCNR has been mentioned a few times. That's in Pennsylvania, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, which is a great funding source that can be tied in with a lot of that. So I did want to throw those out just so people are aware of what we're talking about when we use the acronyms.
Thanks so much, Mark. Mark and Joe, we've gotten some great questions in the chat. It's obvious that there's a lot of interest. And also, I just want to also say that, you know, some of this is Pennsylvania specific, Philadelphia specific, can be a more competitive region for funding, but we track transportation alternatives across the country, and we know that small communities can apply and successfully deliver projects. So we want you to feel encouraged and also know that there's resources, including our organization, to help you. And with that, I know we don't have a ton of time left. And so I also wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for Mark and Joe to share about really specific resources and opportunities. But what I'll do is at least plant the seed of some other funding that you should be tuned into that's on the horizon this year. And that's the US DOT's Safe Streets and Roads for All funding opportunity that's available to communities across the country. Just a quick snapshot of SS4A, or what we call SS4A. This is a new source of federal funding created by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law with really the express purpose of preventing roadway injuries and fatalities. With $1 billion of annual funding for fiscal years 2022 to 2026, this program is really intended for local governments, MPOs, tribal governments, and other political subdivisions to plan and implement strategies to work towards zero traffic deaths. And there's two activities that are available through this fund: action planning and implementation grants. You know, we know that there's a bit more nuance on the planning grants, and the caveat being that we do have a new presidential administration coming in next week, and this program is really subject to change based on that new administration. So we want to plant the seed now, though, and share with you that what's been eligible, and so you have this sort of broad interpretation of planning, get your creative juices flowing, but also know that some of this is subject to change for all of this, for the SS4A program. But luckily we do have 3 years already of funding that's been awarded. So we kind of see the trends over time. Right now, over $2.9 billion has already been awarded to 1,600 communities, covering 77% of the population. We know this funding isn't just for big cities. About half of the recipients have been rural communities, and about half have been first-time recipients, new direct recipients to DOT funds. So while there's some uncertainty about how this program will be administered under the new presidential administration, there's a couple things to know. We know that by law, there's $2 billion to administer in the next 2 years, fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26. 60% of that will go towards implementation, The other 40 will go towards planning. We also know that by law, USDOT will need to release a notice of funding opportunity by the end of March. So while there may be some ambiguity about some of the specifics, we encourage you to start thinking about this funding opportunity now, and 2, do not wait until next year to apply. Based on the past 3 funding cycles, we know that this program is very distinct from other federal funds in that applications are easy as federal fund gets. And we also know that while local match has been required from communities to apply, SS4A has allowed for in-kind match. So really starting to plant that seed, put it on your radar. I will, let's see here, share with you all, since we're running a little bit short of time, what I will do is just share with you all some resources and links to start to think about this funding opportunity. One thing to look into is whether or not your community has even already received an award. This is a good opportunity to coordinate with existing awardees or to plug into what might be already going on. As I mentioned, the notice of funding opportunity is expected by the end of March, but there is an opportunity to subscribe to updates so you can be in the know when that happens. USDOT also has a great pre-work grant checklist where you can actually go through and start preparing your application, start gathering the data that you need to craft a compelling application, and really starting to think about who you want to partner with on submitting this, on implementing some of the planning activities outlined as part of SS4A. Since I know we're running short on time, the kind of ending message, or what I want to round out our conversation with, is that we are available to help communities. And we have a really exciting opportunity if SS4A or TASA especially are the funding opportunities that we talked about are of interest to you, and you're located in the greater Philadelphia region, so the 5 counties of Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, Philadelphia. We're really interested in connecting with you. We're excited to be launching this new opportunity open to communities in the region to really support your application development for biking, walking, and safe routes to school projects. Corey will be sharing in the chat really an opportunity to connect with us, a more detailed description of what we're able to offer communities. We have a great team of staff lined up to support you. And if this is of any interest at all, before filling out our application, I would encourage you to reach out with one of us, schedule a time to chat with us to explore how we can help. In the chat, you'll find a scheduler where you can schedule a 30-minute consult with us, and you can also email us directly. And with that, I know we've been talking a lot about different funding opportunities. And if you're not located in Greater Philadelphia, please don't fret. We are always available and happy to schedule a call to discuss your specific contacts and ways to plug into federal funding. I know we don't have a ton of time for questions. I want to do a shout out to folks who have been fielding questions though in the chat and then the Q&A, including Marisa, Joe Natal, who is also with the DVRPC region. We know that this is an opportunity there's a lot of interest in these funding opportunities, and we're really grateful for everybody who's been able to tune in today. I want to share that there's a lot of opportunities to connect with us and our staff. I know folks have asked about emails. Here's another one to add to your list, and as well as opportunities to connect with Safe Routes Partnership via social media. And also we have a really robust listserv, Google listserv of folks who are Safe Routes to School practitioners from across the country. But with that, I know we're already at time. So I want to give a very warm thank you to our speakers, Joe Banks and Mark Hood. We are eager to connect with you all again and hope you leave with some ideas, inspirations, and some practical advice to really get your projects off the ground, even if it's just that we planted that seed and you want to connect with one of us to continue to develop your ideas. We're here and available to you. Thank you all.